Hi there, this is Tony from pianotone.ca, and this is my review on the Alesis Recital entry-level digital piano. My first piano was an Alesis Recital Pro, which is the fully weighted version of the Alesis Recital, so I've been looking forward to getting my hands on the Alesis Recital for some time to do a review on it. And I was lucky enough to see a used one in a local music store, and the music store was good enough to let me borrow it for the weekend so that I could do this review. So big shout out to Tempo Trend Music in Victoria, BC. Link to them in the video description. So let's check it out. Okay, so the Alesis Recital has 88 full-sized semi-weighted keys with 4 levels of touch sensitivity. It's got 5 voices that are pretty easily accessible with the buttons that are right on the panel. 128 notes of polyphony. For effects, there's chorus, reverb, and there's also pedal modulation. For connectivity, there's a 1/4-inch headphone jack. There's left and right line outputs. They are RCA outputs, which is a little unusual, but they're still perfectly functional. MIDI USB out to connect to your device, your iPad, your PC, or whatever. And there's also a 1/4-inch sustain pedal input for a generic sustain pedal. Should note that the sustain pedal does not come with the Alesis Recital. There's also a metronome that's adjustable. You can transpose the keyboard. There's layer mode, split mode, and lesson mode. And there's also 20 watts of speaker power. Okay, so the keys on the Alesis Recital are pretty much kind of the biggest topic when discussing this keyboard. They're 88 full-sized, but they're semi-weighted. I believe they're spring action. So while they do add some decent resistance to your fingers when you play, they don't really mimic the feel of an acoustic piano the way that fully weighted graded hammer action keys do. They have a significant kind of a springy feel to them, and they're noticeably shallower in depth as far as how far down you have to press them compared to a fully weighted piano. That being said, having some resistance is still an improvement over having no resistance as far as building up your finger strength while you play. And a side benefit of a semi-weighted keyboard is that it weighs significantly less than a fully weighted one, so it's quite a bit more portable. The Alesis Recital weighs about 15 pounds. Most fully weighted digital pianos are going to weigh 30 pounds or a little bit more. Some of them are a little bit less, maybe 25 or so. So it is a little bit easier to carry around. You just really need to be aware of the fact that if you get used to this type of a key bed, that transitioning to a fully weighted digital piano or an acoustic piano is going to be a reasonably big adjustment for you. If you're not familiar with the difference between semi-weighted and weighted keys, I do also have a video on that topic as well, which I'll include in the links below. So if you wanted to go check that out first and then come back here, if you're not familiar with that, then you could do that. Now there's also 4 levels of touch sensitivity. It's actually 3 levels and then off that you can use to adjust how much pressure you need to sound a note on the recital. So you can adjust that depending on how you tend to play or how you want to play. Okay, there are 5 voices on the Alesis Recital. There's piano, electric piano, organ, synth, and bass. And it's pretty easy to select those. They've each got their own separate button on the control panel. On some entry-level and even intermediate digital pianos, in order to change a voice, you sometimes have to look up some kind of a key combination in the manual where you hold down a button and then press a different key on the piano to choose a voice. You don't have to worry about that here. You do have to do that on the recital to change some of the more advanced settings, but to choose a voice, it's nice and easy. Now, although there's only 5 voices on the recital, most of them are actually pretty decent, especially for this price point, and totally usable. The piano, electric piano, and the organ sounds are all pretty good, and the bass isn't bad either. The synth voice, in my opinion, is a little bit cheesy, but you could still use it for some stuff. Given that this keyboard is intended to be an entry-level digital piano as opposed to an arranger keyboard that has hundreds of voices and rhythms and that type of thing, it's actually a decent set of basic voices to get started with. The only voice type that is missing, in my opinion, is strings, which you often see on digital pianos. That is often layered, like combined with a piano voice during ballads and that type of thing. So let's check out all the voices without any effects on any of them in the next video. Okay, so for effects, the Alesis Recital has 5 types of reverb, 5 types of chorus, and there's also a pedal resonance that you can turn on or off. For reverb, there's room, hall, church, delay, and pan delay. And for chorus, there's chorus 1, 2, 3, flanger, and rotary. Now for pedal resonance, when the pedal resonance is on and you use the sustain pedal, you're going to get a bit of an additional reverb effect that gets sounded. It is to be noted that the chorus is disabled while pedal resonance is on. Here's a quick video demonstrating all of the effects. Okay, so for connectivity, there's a USB MIDI port that you can use to connect to MIDI compatible software or apps on a PC or a device, things like GarageBand, etc. So you can use this as a MIDI controller. There's a 1/4-inch headphone jack. There are left and right line output jacks. They are RCA outputs, which is a little unusual, but they're perfectly usable, perfectly good. You just need to have the right kind of cable, so you're going to want probably a dual RCA cable that goes to dual 1/4-inch, either that or some adapters. There's also a 1/4-inch generic sustain pedal jack. Should note that there's no sustain pedal included with the Alesis Recital, and also that you want to make sure you get a sustain pedal when you get one that has a polarity switch in it. When I hooked my sustain pedal up to the Alesis Recital, mine has a polarity switch, and I had to use that to flip it, because otherwise it was going to work backwards. So it would sustain notes when I wasn't pressing the pedal, and then not sustain notes when I was pressing the pedal. Most pedals nowadays, the generic ones, do have polarity switches. Just make sure that whatever pedal you get does have one. I'll include a link below to a sustain pedal that I would recommend that does have a polarity switch. So some of the other functions that are included on the Alesis Recital, there's a layer function. So you can combine two voices together, as I was mentioning before. Piano and strings is a common one used for ballads where the strings kind of fill everything in. There is no strings voice on the Alesis Recital, so I tested out some of the other voices and I found that the piano over top of the electric piano had a decent enough effect at kind of doing the same thing, filling it in. You can also adjust the relative volume of the two voices to each other, which is something I probably should have done in the video you're going to see, where I had the electric piano probably a little bit too loud when I was combining it with the piano. There's a split mode, so you can split the keyboard into two different voices, so one voice on the right, one voice on the left. And a very common one that I use a lot on my piano playing is to have bass in the left, so I can play a walking bass line, while I'm playing either chords or a solo or something in my right hand with piano, electric piano, or some other sound. There's a lesson mode. That's going to split the keyboard into two halves and make it so that they each have the same octaves. So the intent there is that you're sitting with another person and you want to play the exact same notes together like a piano instructor or something. There's a metronome, pretty standard. You can configure the metronome not only by just choosing an actual BPM, you do have to look up in the manual how to do that with the key combinations, but it's not too big a deal. Or you can tap the rhythm. You can also edit what beat the chime comes in on, which basically changes the time signature for you, so you can have it come in on the fourth beat for 4/4, third beat for 3/4, that type of thing. For transposing, you can transpose the pitch on this piano, which is a great thing for us beginners. The only kind of beef I have with the way that the Recital has implemented that is the only way you can adjust the key is to go up or down half a step. There's no return to standard tuning option there. So basically, if you go up a bunch of steps and you've maybe messed up or gone up too many or too little, the only way to get back to standard tuning is to turn the piano off and back on again, unless your ear is good enough that you can just hear standard tuning once you go back down to it half step at a time. So the other choices, to be honest, there really aren't a lot of comparable products in the price range of the Alesis Recital. Most other keyboards in that price range tend to be entry-level arranger keyboards that focus more on a lot of sounds, rhythms, arranger functions, as opposed to focusing on piano. These types of keyboards will usually only have 61 keys and will almost always be unweighted, so not even semi-weighted, definitely not fully weighted, but they'll just be completely unweighted. And some of the cheaper ones aren't even touch sensitive. And in my opinion, touch sensitivity is absolutely mandatory for any keyboard. One keyboard I have reviewed that does kind of come to mind is the Yamaha Piaggero NP32. It's kind of a unique product. Yamaha refers to it as a piano-focused keyboard as opposed to a digital piano, and I think that's a good description. It's got 76 keys instead of 88. They're not semi-weighted, and they're not weighted, but there is a subtle grading to them, so they are slightly harder to play on the left than they are on the right-hand side, which is meant to mimic that sensation on an acoustic piano. It has more sounds than the Alesis, and the sounds are probably a little bit better quality than the Alesis ones are. And it also has a single track recording function, and there's an app that Yamaha has that you can use with the Piaggero to basically help control the settings a little bit easier. On the other side, however, the Yamaha has smaller speakers than the Alesis, and it has half the polyphony, 64 notes instead of 128, and doesn't have a chorus function. The Yamaha is about $50 US or so more expensive than the Alesis Recital. They're both really good products, and after now having reviewed and played both of them, if it was me, I would probably lean pretty much towards the Alesis Recital just simply to get the full 88 keys, the line-out jacks, and the larger speakers. So in my opinion, the bigger comparison decision to be making when you're considering the Alesis Recital is whether or not you want to spend the extra money to get fully weighted hammer action keys as opposed to semi-weighted. Pianos like the Alesis Recital Pro, which I owned for about a year and I have a review for that I'll link to, or the Inovis i88, which is a newer product that's also fully weighted, not graded, and I've also done a review for that. I like both of those pianos quite a bit, and that's going to cost you about $160 US or so more to upgrade from something like the Recital to get something that's got the fully weighted hammer action keys. So that's probably the biggest decision that you're going to have to weigh in your purchase. So final verdict on the Alesis Recital. Overall, I think the Recital is a really solid entry-level digital piano, especially given how affordable it is. The single biggest thing you have to remember is the fact that it is a semi-weighted action, and while some key resistance is better than none, it's still not going to feel like playing an acoustic piano or a fully weighted hammer action digital piano. So if you choose to move to something that is fully weighted later on, it is going to be an adjustment for you. But if you're just starting out playing the piano and you aren't sure whatever you buy is going to end up in the closet in 6 months, or if you just don't want to break the bank, or if having a fully weighted hammer action piano that's going to make an easier transition to an acoustic piano down the road isn't hugely important to you, then this could be a great option. For the price, given that the Recital has 88 full-size semi-weighted keys, a decent piano sound, the ability to transpose, a USB MIDI jack so that you can connect to apps and MIDI software, and left and right line-out jacks, and a headphone jack, makes it a pretty good starter piano. So with all that in mind, I would definitely recommend the Alesis Recital if it fits in with your needs and your budget. If you would like to check current prices for the Recital Pro, or the Inovis i88, and I also included a link for a sustain pedal that has a polarity switch, please click on my affiliates links below to check out what the current prices are. And thanks a bunch for watching the review, and happy piano shopping. Have a good day.